From Thom Hartmann's Daily Take Substack. The Epstein Affair has moved from sleaze to a crisis for American democracy itself. This Epstein Affair has shown a pattern where men of wealth and power created a zone of impunity that protected them for decades while destroying vulnerable people like Virginia Giuffre. Published November 13th, 2025. The following is a song inspired by this article.
There's a chill in the marble halls, whispers traded behind those walls where the power smiled and the angels fell and truth got sold for wishing well. Oh, the shame we let in, it's wearing our skin, dressed up in money, baptized in sin. When the high and the holy start crawling again, you can feel the rod where justice should have been. They said it was rumors, just dirt and lies, but the girls were crying under poison skies, and the names were carved in the nation's crown, while the choir kept singing to drown them out. Oh, the shame we let in, it's wearing our skin, dressed up in money, baptized in sin. When the high and the holy start crawling again, you can feel the rod where justice should have been. Her flag still waves, but it's heavy and torn. The stars look dim on a soul that's worn. We fed the beast, we built his den and called it freedom again and again. Oh, the shame we let in, now it's deep in our veins. No court or crown can wash out the stains. If silence is gold, then we're rich in the end. But God help the children we fail to defend.
The New York Times reported that Donald Trump personally called Representative Lauren Boebert, Republican of Colorado, and then had Bondi, Blanche, and Patel take her into the top-secret no-recording-devices-allowed situation room to urge her to drop her support for releasing the Epstein files. He apparently also tried to reach Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, for the same reason. Yesterday's newly surfaced details about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump again reveal something far larger than the tawdry specifics of their relationship, as grotesque as those are. They point to a structural crisis at the heart of American democracy. As Republican President Theodore Roosevelt said, quote, "The exposure and punishment of public corruption is an honor to a nation, not a disgrace. The shame lies in toleration, not in correction. If we fail to do all that in us lies to stamp out corruption, we cannot escape our share of responsibility for the guilt. The first requisite of successful self-government is unflinching enforcement of the law and the cutting out of corruption," end quote. These newest documents, including Epstein's correspondence with Michael Wolff about how Epstein's knowledge of Trump's involvement could be used against him long before Trump was involved in politics, apparently to blackmail him, something Epstein apparently advised Putin how to do, reveal a pattern we've seen throughout history. There's a pattern where men of wealth and power create a zone of impunity that protects them while destroying vulnerable people like Virginia Giuffre. This is where the story moves from Sleaze to a massive crisis for American democracy itself. When a president insists that scrutiny of his possible crimes is illegitimate, he's not defending his innocence. He's attacking the foundational principle of the American Republic. As John Adams proclaimed, quote, "We are a government of laws, not of men," end quote. If only that were true today. If only more than a tiny handful of Republicans believed in that principle. From Socrates collapsing Greece and Caligula's Rome, through the dictatorship of the 20th century and today's Russia and Hungary, history shows that democracies don't survive when their leaders live above the law and beyond the reach of legitimate inquiry and free press. This danger to America is magnified by Trump's pardoning or promising to pardon the very people who've already committed crimes on his behalf, acts intended to benefit him politically or personally. And he continues to signal that he'll pardon even more people who help him out. This isn't forgiveness. It's instruction. It's an explicit message to present and future loyalists that when they commit crimes for him, particularly those involving election or financial fraud, they'll be rewarded rather than punished. From Todd Blanche's treatment of Maxwell to Bondi's and Patel's ongoing cover-up for Trump, he's created a private so-called, quote, justice system, end quote, where loyalty to dear leader outweighs loyalty to the law. As we see in the case of Ghislaine Maxwell and his pardon of a crypto executive who made his sons billions, our Justice Department has turned into a, quote, protect and enrich Trump department, end quote. Amy Wallace, co-author of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, Nobody's Girl, says she knows the names of the men who raped and trafficked children with Jeffrey Epstein. She says the FBI and the Department of Justice know them too. Quote, "Yes, I know who the names are," end quote, Wallace said. Quote, "Virginia knows who the names are. So does the FBI and the DOJ," end quote. Was Trump part of it? Was his Miss Teen USA pageant another front in Epstein's network? Is that why Speaker Mike Johnson was stonewalling, terrified of the truth? George Washington warned that when politicians become more loyal to their party or its leader than to our nation or our laws, quote, "it serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption, which find a facilitated access to the government itself through channels of party passion," end quote. The principle of a nation of, quote, laws, not men, end quote, that Adams envisioned becomes meaningless when wealthy and powerful men are no longer held responsible for their actions. Jefferson reminded us that, quote, "the price of liberty is eternal vigilance," end quote, a phrase that becomes hollow if the institutions meant to guard liberty are paralyzed by the fear of offending a wannabe dictator like Trump. We see this with billionaires like Musk, whose destruction of USAID has already caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of children with absolutely no accountability. With Trump's henchmen and Republicans in Congress gutting health care and food assistance while threatening war with Venezuela. Thomas Paine cautioned that, quote, "when men yield up the privilege of thinking, the last shadow of liberty quits the horizon," end quote. Paine never imagined corrupt billionaires working a network of over 100 1,500 right-wing radio stations, 4 right-wing television networks, and hundreds of right-wing controlled newspapers and websites, all with the singular message of protecting their wealth, privilege, immunity, and tax cuts. Today, we're seeing right before our eyes in real time how easily democracy can slip away when a leader trains its followers to believe every investigation is treason and every fact is a lie. The Epstein revelations matter because they're symptomatic of a larger ecosystem of secrecy and impunity that Trump and many of the right-wing billionaires associated with him have relied on for decades, an ecosystem that destroys democracies. Epstein, Trump, and Maxwell spent years cultivating relationships with extremely rich and politically powerful people. That network helped shield them long after allegations of exploitation became so obvious that they would have destroyed a less wealthy or powerful person. The crisis of this affair presents to America, including the complicity of Republicans in the House and Senate, along with the billionaire owners and executives of right-wing media, isn't simply about, quote, who knew what when, end quote. The crisis is that such a network exists at all, that Trump has rebuilt government in a way to protect that morbidly rich network. These latest releases remind us that when powerful men, including those claiming to be in the press, operate in spaces where wealth and social justice shield them from scrutiny, abuses become routine and accountability vanishes for decades or evaporates entirely. Thus, the most urgent threat to our republic isn't the past behavior of Epstein or even Trump's proximity or alleged participation with it. The real danger is that Trump is now rewriting the rules of political accountability in real time in ways that have already corrupted the Republican Party for a generation and threaten to corrupt our entire nation in ways we may never recover from. By dismissing legitimate scrutiny, including raping children and inquiries into Russia's role in Trump's elections as, quote, hoaxes, end quote, by attacking those who want transparency, and by pardoning people who commit crimes for him, our president is teaching his followers that law has no meaning except as a tool to reward friends and punish enemies. That's precisely the type of explicit corruption that America's founders feared and repeatedly warned us about, like in ancient Rome or modern-day Russia or Hungary. It's the corruption of a republic from within. Democracy can't survive this pattern if it's allowed to continue. A previous generation of Democratic and Republican legislators understood this. That is why they drove the criminal and corrupt Richard Nixon from office. The founders also understood this, and their warnings weren't abstract philosophy. Alexander Hamilton, for example, thought he and the others who wrote the Constitution had insulated us from exactly what is happening today. But he and his colleagues never imagined that a group of billionaires would spend 40-plus years and hundreds of millions of dollars to seize the U.S. Supreme Court, which would then legalize political bribery. They never conceived of an Australian billionaire family coming to America and building a nationwide media ecosystem that was capable of convincing Americans that up was down, wrong was right, and a convicted fraudster and rapist would become a noble president. They would have laughed at you if you told them that the richest man in the world would come from apartheid South Africa and hook up with a grifter billionaire to put him back into office after presiding over the unnecessary deaths of 500,000 Americans. And they never imagined that a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a serial bankrupt and professional con man would be able to leverage right-wing billionaire money and captive media to ascend to the Oval Office twice. In Federalist 68, Hamilton wrote, quote, talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors of a single state, but it will require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole Union, and of so considerable a portion that it would be necessary to make him a successful candidate for the distinguished office of the President of the United States, end quote. He never imagined that the American people tolerating such a widespread level of deceit and corruption. Today, those founding ideals are being tested in a way so serious, so severe, that it puts the future of our country in question. If we fail to investigate possible crimes and enforce the law, if we continue to allow billionaires and Trump to corrupt our political system, if we continue to tolerate a culture of impunity to harden into a permanent feature of our nation's political life, America will cease to be America. And that, quote, shame we let in, end quote, is something we must purge from our body politic and never again tolerate.